Hey, hi everyone. I'm Liz. Welcome back to the Autoimmune Diaries podcast. I am now live on YouTube as well, which is, I don't know if it's exciting or nerve-wracking, but here we are. Today I've got my beautiful friend and fellow nutritionist, Vicky Ellenport from the Nutrition Factor. Welcome, Vicky.
Thank you, Elise. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited to talk about all things autoimmune. So thank you for having me.
Yes, I've been wanting to have this conversation with you for ages.
No.
Especially because we're both quite passionate about autoimmunity and the AIP, although you've taken it one step further than I have, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But yeah, before we get into like the nitty-gritty stuff, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about your journey and what's led you to where you are now?
Yeah, well, I guess I have had a bit of an interesting health journey in that I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis when I was about 22. And it was not too severe, and it didn't really bother me for quite a few years. But then I think in my 30s, it actually got quite bad. And I was just really, really struggling with it for a while. I had a child in my early 40s, and it got worse again after that. And then I guess I just got sick and tired of it. And I thought, there's got to be another way. I was taking very limited medication, but the doctors were just going, sorry, nothing we can do, nothing we can do, nothing we can do. And I just started doing more and more research into food and other ways of eating. And I tried keto and I tried paleo. And the only thing that made a difference, I actually went gluten-free first, which made a little difference. But then after a few months, nothing special. And then I tried paleo, and that was probably the best result that I had. So I guess I didn't. And then I actually did the specific carbohydrate diet, which is probably very similar to AIP, the most similar, I would say, to AIP. Mm-hmm. And that was fantastic. The results from that were great. And then I decided I'm going to leave my fashion profession and study nutrition. And that's what I did. So it was a kind of a slow progression, but by the time I got my head around a new way of eating and decided I wanted to change my profession, it kind of went fairly quickly after that. Wow. And I guess, it was really interesting because when I first started practicing, I mean, you and I we finished at the same time. Mm-hmm. And when I decided to start practicing, I just kind of went wide and didn't really know what I wanted to focus on. And I guess it didn't take long to realize, you know what? This is what I know. I've actually got 3 autoimmune conditions. Wow. I've also got Raynaud's, which is kind of common, I think, but I don't really feel any major effects of it. But when I was pregnant with my daughter, I developed a really serious DVT.
Wow.
And while I was lucky, the pregnancy went ahead with no issues at all. By the time I gave birth and they sent all my blood testing away, they realized I had antiphospholipid syndrome, which is a very serious clotting disorder. And they pretty much said, it was a miracle you got pregnant at all. Which was, my daughter's my miracle baby. And that's been really challenging because there's no cure for that. And I've been working at, just through AIP and healthy eating and paleo eating for a long time to try and reduce my antibodies, but that hasn't worked yet. So, I'm still dealing with that.
Yeah. It's such a journey, isn't it?
It's a journey. It's a journey. You're constantly dealing with, staying healthy, eating well, managing everything else in your life, trying to reduce stress. There's a lot that's going on. And I think what's really difficult with autoimmune is that 80% of the sufferers are women. Mm-hmm. And we're the one, especially when we've had kids, that are always juggling the kids, the house, our businesses. you know, for some reason, men don't seem to do as much juggling as we do.
Yeah.
And I think all that juggling just puts a lot of extra pressure on us.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an interesting way to manage everything moving forward.
I think as women as well, we tend to be more, I don't know, like we feel more resilient, I think. Like I know in my experience, I definitely, like I don't have children, but I definitely feel like, you know, if I need to get things done and I have that bit of energy, I just get them done.
Exactly.
And I don't really think about, I think in the moment, I just think, well, I can get it done. I'm going to get it done while I'm not, you know, burnt out. But I don't think a lot of the time people think about it that way. I think unless you're really hit with some sort of chronic health condition, you don't stop and think how to manage your energy.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that a lot of us just push through. We get to the end of the day and we just collapse. Like sometimes my daughter says, let's watch a movie, and it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, no, I'm going to bed. Like I'm done. And I'll get into bed and then I might read or do something to wind down.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think that we just keep going so much of the time that we have to listen to our bodies and say no and push back. So I think as I get older, I'm better at pushing back and saying, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to have those 5 drinks. I'm just going to have one and that's enough. So I think it's really important to listen to our bodies.
And learn the art of saying no.
Yes, and learn the art of saying no and having good boundaries.
Yeah, because we really live in like a hustle culture.
Yes.
And if you have autoimmune conditions, it's not good for anyone, because chronic stress is, you know, it's the number one leading cause of so many illnesses.
Yeah.
And so regardless of whether you have autoimmune or not, it's, you know, having that badge of honor, or having that badge of, you know, being busy it's not something to be proud of, I don't think.
No. And I feel like in a way COVID sort of reset that for all of us. Like we used to go out all the time, work out, you know, the exercise. Everybody I knew, including myself, were always on the go. But I think that we've kind of, after, you know, how many lockdowns we've had in Melbourne, we've kind of learned to sort of stop a little bit more and to do a little bit less. And personally, I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah. I think the one good thing about it all was a lot of people could really find a little bit more work-life balance.
Yeah.
And I've noticed quite a lot of people, particularly in our industry, have taken their businesses online rather than going into a clinic. And I think it takes away that financial stress of not having to pay rent and, you know, all those overhead fees, and you just from the comfort of your home, and you can take breaks if you need to. And
I agree. I think a lot of people have had to pivot to online. And I think that's really great. There's a big opportunity, especially in this space, because I guess personally for me, I consider myself a clinical nutritionist, but also I'm a certified AIP coach. And while from a clinical nutritionist point of view, there is a definite benefit of seeing people face to face, taking blood pressure, doing physical examination, you know, having the BMI scales. That was always a big part of my practice. So now I don't have that. But from a coaching point of view, it's absolutely fine to work via Zoom, because you don't have to see everybody. You just have to provide motivation, which you can do, and support, which you can do online.
Yeah. And I mean, the good thing is, you know, we can access people's pathology, we can order them further testing if we need to, and that can just come, you know, gets sent straight to our emails. So even though we can't do those physical examinations, there's still ways that we can actually have a look at what this person's dealing with more from, you know, biochemistry and pathology perspective.
That's right.
Which is really important in our industry.
Absolutely. And, you know, while we can't look at the patient and make a bit of an assessment ourselves. How do they look? What do they feel? We can still do a bit because we're still looking at their faces. We can get an idea of what's going on. And I think that's still important. You can actually ask them to get their blood pressure taken. There are a lot of ways around it. Like you said, it's very easy to access pathology and additional testing. I recently had a client come to me, and while she didn't have any autoimmune issues, she had some serious digestive issues that she'd had for a long time. And, I asked her to go and get SIBO testing. So for the listeners that don't know what that is, it's small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, which I'm seeing more and more. And she was negative, thank goodness, but she tested positive to fructose malabsorption.
Yeah, there you go.
So, that was great because we knew which way to go from there. But, that's the importance of testing.
Yeah, it is very important. And of course, having practitioners who know how to ask the right questions always helps as well. So
yeah, that's right.
Which is something that you're very good at.
Well, nosy. I've always been a nosy Barker, but I've certainly I learned it in clinic, right? When we were all in clinic together at college, I certainly learned that what people come in and tell you compared to what the actual truth is quite poles apart a lot of the time. So it's about kind of thinking, I don't believe that, and then just kind of digging a little bit.
Yeah, because it's when you start to put the puzzle pieces together, it's like, this doesn't quite add up.
Exactly. It's like the client that says, oh, well, no, I actually don't eat any sugar at all. No.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you sort of say, oh, so what did you snack on today? Oh, well, I had 2 apples, and then I had this, and then I had that. Oh, and then I had a bit of chocolate, and then you sort of sit back and go, oh, but no sugar.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting when you start questioning.
But I think that's not, I don't think that's always a case of the client trying to be sneaky and lie to us. It's more just that they don't know. Maybe they associate sugar with white table sugar.
Exactly.
Refined sugar, and it's like, oh, but I have like dark chocolate. That's not unhealthy. So I think it's like that association of, what their understanding of certain nutrition and certain food groups are, I guess.
That's right. And I think that a lot of people, they might think they've got a really healthy diet, but the fact that they end the day each day with a glass of wine or 2 glasses of wine can actually undo that fantastically healthy diet. And they don't realize that.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. That's probably the most interesting thing. I had a conversation with somebody the other day who said to me their cholesterol had gone up during lockdown. I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, what did you do differently? She literally said, I had 2 glasses of wine at the end of each day to give myself a break from the day. And that was enough to increase her cholesterol that much. Can you believe that?
That's crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's so fascinating to me how different we are in the way that our bodies respond to different foods. It's just so fascinating to me.
Absolutely.
Especially, and like, this is something that I always try and drive home so much, is that there is no one size fits all. Regardless of what you believe, like what has worked for you, you could absolutely swear, till the cows come home that this is the way. It's not going to work for everyone.
No, absolutely. And I've really noticed that, especially with the Autoimmune Protocol with AIP.
Yeah.
Even though it's kind of like this is what you do, this is how you do it, there's no one size fits all. Somebody might come in, particularly men, and go, yep, all in, bang, let's go. Whereas women will come in and go, well, I just don't know if I can do it this way. Yeah. They might need to go slowly. You might need to let them eat a particular thing for a lot longer. Yeah. It just needs to be tweaked a little bit for everybody. And I think that's what's really important. And that's what, it's easy for me to be, okay, this is how we do it, bang. Mm-hmm. But you just can't do that because not everybody is at the same stage of change. Really. It's all about where they are on that change cycle. Some people are ready to go for it because they've had enough. Other people have got so much going on in their lives that they need to go really slow. And I guess it's up to us to work out, you know, which type of person wants slow, which type of person wants fast, and then help them through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with something like the AIP, I mean, I think any elimination diet can be a challenge, more so mentally, just to kind of brace yourself for that change. But I think the AIP can seem quite intimidating because there is quite a lot that we are eliminating in those initial stages.
I agree.
And
I totally agree.
I think one of the challenges for people is they're so used to eating a certain way that all of a sudden it's like, well, those are literally the foods that I live off. So what do I have now? Like, what do I eat now?
Yeah.
And then it's just, it's like relearning how to cook certain foods and how to prepare certain foods, and like revamping, you know, your whole fridge and pantry. For some people, it could be their gut microbiome is so used to certain foods and it's reliant on certain things that it's hard to, you know, give up those cravings.
Yeah, look, I think what generally happens is you've either got the camp where they have a fairly decent diet and then moving over to AIP is challenging but not that difficult.
Yeah.
Or you've got people that just live on junk food. But what I find in my practice is by the time people come to me, they are kind of, they're a bit a bit frustrated and at a loose end and don't know where to turn, and medicine hasn't helped them, and they've got so many symptoms that they're kind of at the point of going, I'll do anything. And then mentally they're more prepared. And I think also because that's what I specialise in, and because people read about it on my website, they also read about what's involved. They've done their research, so they don't come in blind. But I find that it's more important to say to them, okay, so it's 30 days. You can do 30 days. 30 days is nothing. This is what we're going to replace everything with. This is what you'll have for breakfast. This is what you can have for lunch. This is what you can have for dinner. Cut fruit and vegetables up, have those through the day. So I think it's not about eliminating. It's actually about replacing. So I think when it's just a small thing, but it makes a lot of difference to people when you say to them, oh, well, you can't eat grains and you can't eat this and you can't eat that. No eggs, no, you know, nuts, no seeds, no dairy, no sugar, no, and the list can go on and on and on. And people are just like, whoa.
What can I eat?
It's like full on. It's actually better to say, well, let's just scale it back and say you can eat most vegetables, you can eat pretty much all fruit, and you know, you can eat tons of seafood and tons of meat and whatever chicken and etc. you want. And then I kind of go, here are all the things you can find at the supermarket that are okay. And because I think what wears people down is the fatigue of cooking. And that's I think personally for myself, who've done AIP and many diets, similar diets for a while, I think that's the hardest part, is actually cooking. And when you're somebody that eats out a lot or gets takeaway a lot, or lives on their own and doesn't like cooking for one, I think that's probably the most challenging thing that people say to me.
Yeah, for sure. And it can be challenging when you have that worn down fatigue to then have to get into the kitchen and prepare a full meal, especially if you have a family as well. To like, do you cook the same thing or do you have to prep two different things? And
that's hard when they've got a husband and then they've got kids and everyone eats something different. I've got a few clients like that, and honestly my advice to them is cook for yourself. It's the healthiest, most wonderful food you can possibly eat, because you know, for those that don't know, AIP is highly nutritious. You're eating the most nutritious food you can possibly get. So that's what you should serve to everybody. And then you can have chili and all these other things that people can add to their plate if they want. And then it's easy all round. You know, the
Yeah.
people that try and cook 3 meals, I'm like, honey, not going to happen. Forget it.
I mean, yeah, there's definitely some amazing options. You know, and I mean, nowadays there's websites and there's cookbooks available for recipe inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so much like we can access so much with the
We
drop of
can
a hat.
access a lot. And, you know, I sort of like to start my coaching sessions by actually getting people to buy a cookbook.
Yeah.
Because I found, I know it's probably my age that I don't do everything online, but I do find that when you're looking and you're reading and you can post it against the things you really like, I think that that's a great way for people to sort of segue into the diet and understand what's involved, because and then it just becomes a resource. I mean, I love the Healing Kitchen, sorry.
Yeah.
That's my favorite book, The Healing Kitchen. I think they've done a really good job with the basics. They've got lots of desserts, which people get excited that they can have some of that. But there's heaps of different options. And that's probably my favorite.
Okay, so why don't we tell people a bit more about what actually is the AIP? So let's start with the bad. What can't we have? What are the no-nos?
Well, first of all, actually, I'm going to say that at AIP is the Autoimmune Protocol. And one part of it is the food. So it's an elimination diet. But the other parts, which we'll get to later, are exercise, physical activity, social connection, stress management, sleep, etc. So it's not just about the food, but obviously food tends to be the hardest part for most people. So that's kind of where they think it's all about. So what you can't have is you can't have grains. So that's probably the biggest thing. So there's no rice, no wheat, no quinoa, no buckwheat. So it doesn't matter whether it's a gluten-free grain or a gluten grain. All of them are off limits. No spelt, no rye. So that pretty much wipes out all bread, all pasta, all rice, all quinoa, all corn, and most processed foods like cakes and biscuits and things like that. They're all pretty much out.
Yeah.
Then there's no dairy, of which I think people aren't as fussed about dairy anymore because there's so many great alternatives to dairy. The challenge is there's also no nuts. So most of the dairy alternatives are nut milks or oat milk and things like that. So they're all out. So I think that also makes it a bit more difficult. And then there's no sugar, no processed oils, and no seeds either. There's no nightshades. So that's a handful of vegetables that actually have a lot of anti-nutrient properties. So that's your eggplant, your capsicum, chili, tomato, potatoes, things like that. And then there's no legumes as well. Okay, so our legumes are all of our, fantastic things like chickpeas, lentils, but there's also all the other things like your runner beans and your snow peas, that sort of stuff as well. What else is there? And all your food chemicals and food additives and things like that. So there's quite a bit of that. And then, of course, no alcohol. And in terms of your spices, because we cut out seeds, there's all the seed-based spices are out as well. So there's so many things. So anything, any nightshades or any spices derived from nightshades, there's a massive list of them, like tons of things. So it means that all your wonderful things like chia seeds, pepita seeds, all those are out. Alcohol's out, and also eggs are out. So it does end up being quite a big list, and then you look at it and it's like a whole 2 pages of things and you go, oh my God, how am I going to manage that? But then when you go to the foods that you can include, you realize that there are a lot, but they all kind of fall within a couple of families. So there's tons of red meat, all poultry, all fish, all shellfish, all, your roots and your tuber vegetables, leafy veggies. You've got, your, oh God, how many? There's like a whole lot of sea vegetables, right? Like nori and all that's actually allowed. So there's tons and tons of them, but they all tend to fall in the fruit, vegetable, meat, fish kind of umbrella. So it's about, what do you do with that? How many different things can you make with that? Well, there's thousands and thousands of incredible recipes using those simple ingredients.
Yeah.
Tons of them.
Yeah. I think the challenge that I've found for myself when I've done it, and for a lot of people that I've talked to, is breakfast.
Yes.
That's the
breakfast is a killer.
Because I think, I'm so used to having eggs for breakfast.
Yeah.
And it's such a quick and easy go-to, whip up some, fry them, scramble them, boil them, poach them, however you like the eggs. To then all of a sudden be told, well, no, you can't have this food.
That's right. And when you can't have eggs, and you can't have porridge, and you can't have a chia pudding, and you can't have granola, it's like, what do you have?
Yeah.
So, well, I guess I do like a whole lot of breakfast ideas, and I have posted quite a few posts on my page as well, my Instagram page, about different breakfast options. But I guess one of the easiest is, most of the AIP recipes, there's tons of slow cookers, or your sausage, your meat, your mince. So your mince with your vegetables, that sort of thing, they're fantastic for breakfast because they actually fill you up. But because they don't have many carbohydrates, they are more protein based. You tend to feel very full for a lot longer without the bloating feeling. So I think they're probably the best options. Look, I personally tend to have a lot of berries and kiwi fruit in the morning with some coconut yogurt. And then I'll have a paleo granola, which you can't have on AIP, but you can make an AIP version of granola. So you can do that. Or you can just do coconut, like shaved coconut and things. And sultanas, you can use dried fruit to come up with some interesting different types of granolas as well.
And if you want a little bit of the chocolate flavour, then you can use carob, which is a great alternative.
Absolutely. You can use carob, that's right. And we also find that because it's only 30 days, it's actually not that difficult for a lot of people once they have a big repertoire. So in the Healing Kitchen, there is one recipe that I love for breakfast. It's like an oatmeal. It's a grain oatmeal, and it's made with shredded carrots, shredded coconut, banana, and I think it's got currants in it, and coconut milk. And I make a big batch of that. It is so good. And I have posted about that, and I have to probably do it again to remind people. That's probably my go-to. And then the other thing that's really yummy is like a hash browns, but a chicken and like a chicken mince with sweet potato hash browns. So it's kind of like a fritter, but without the frittery stuff. So they're fantastic as well. And then I just say to people, that's it. So the carrot and the banana oatmeal is like a sweet version, and then your chicken and sweet potato fritters is like the savory version. And then you just add a whole lot of green veggies, add a side of spinach, so you end up eating something that's really nutritious for breakfast.
Absolutely.
As opposed to a piece of toast with Vegemite, which let's face it, we all love, but it's low in nutrients, high in calorie density, low in nutrients.
And this protocol is essentially about loading your body up with as many healing anti-inflammatory nutrients as possible.
Exactly.
So
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely fun ways to make lots of different foods. And I think, it's really simple. I think it can seem a little bit overwhelming and a bit scary, like, oh my God, I don't know what to eat, especially if you are used to eating a certain way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's honestly going back to basics. Like, it is
Yeah.
basics 101. Eat your good quality proteins, wholesome fruit and vegetables, and that's it.
That's right. That's right. And there is a big focus on vegetables. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
actually a really big. I put a big focus on green vegetables. So I also love to do smoothies for breakfast. I think that's great. There's coconut water you can use. There's coconut milk you can use. So you can make something really quite filling and nutritious. You can add nutritional yeast, which gives you a big hit of B12.
Yeah.
So there are lots of fantastic things you can do. I guess one of the things that I focus on in my practice is also just testing. I'm really big on pathology testing in particular. So before I provide any supplementation to clients, supplement accordingly. I think that's really important because I do find that a lot of people that have had long-term autoimmune, they are low in, say, B12, folate, iron, zinc, and vitamin D, which is the big one, and very easy to fix.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm constantly pushing them to add more greens to their plate, do some juices, green juices, and also, green smoothies and things like that. They're great to have during the day. When you're feeling hungry, that's a really quick go-to. And then adding things like avocado makes it really full, gives you the good fats.
And you can add a little bit of dates if you want to curb those sugar cravings a little bit as well.
Absolutely. Dates are great because they're also high in fiber.
Yeah. Not too many dates,
which I think is really important.
If you're mixing it
just a little bit, because they're high in fructose as well. So
if you're mixing it in with some healthy fats, then it kind of balances it out. So
exactly.
But you can add, coconut oil, and avocados are amazing. I add them to my smoothies all the time because they make it so much more creamy, and they do add, they do keep you feeling a lot more full, and you need those healthy fats for your brain. So
exactly. So I think that's I think when you break it down, there's quite a few breakfast options. When you get through your smoothies, you've got a few sweet options, then you've got a few savory options. And realistically, most people eat the same thing for breakfast. They've got like one or two or three things and they rotate them.
Yeah.
So what I find is people go through and try different things and end up finding 3 or 4 things that they love. They batch cook it, freeze some, put some in the fridge, bang, the next week's done.
Yeah. Or you can even freeze them. Like, I like to make like little meatballs or meat patties and things like that, and then just saute up some greens and some avocado on the side. And that's a really easy breakfast that you can like have it in the fridge for a few days, or just make your own. I would always recommend to make your own burgers, because it's hard to find like pre-made ones that don't contain some sort of nightshade, whether it's pepper, or a lot of them will contain soy, which is another no-no on the AIP.
That's right. I didn't even mention soy. Yes, soy is a no-no on the AIP. But I agree. Making your own is the best way. And the other thing, I guess, I just want people to understand about the protocol is it's only 30 days, and then we start reintroducing. And one of the first things we on the list of reintroduction is egg yolk. And I guess that gives people hope that eggs come back quickly. And coffee and cacao, all those come back in stage 1. There's 4 stages of reintroductions. And I think what happens is, you give up a whole group of foods, but you reintroduce one food. So the reintroduction process has its challenges because it's very lengthy. It takes a while. But the purpose of it is to actually identify what foods do not work for you. And, you know, I've got one client at the moment who's just done such an amazing job. She's had really, really bad psoriasis, terrible. And it's almost, you can't see any of it. There's this tiny little patch the size of her little fingernail now, the back of her head, and that's it. And she's probably been working with me for a few months now. We've been doing reintroductions for ages. She cannot reintroduce one nut, not one.
Wow.
Not a single nut. Now, most diets, including paleo and ketogenic diets, they don't even eliminate nuts.
Yeah.
So without stripping it back to nothing, she would never have worked out what's going on with her issue with nuts.
Yeah.
So I think that's where doing an elimination diet like AIP is so important.
Yeah.
And she also had different deficiencies and everything. I mean, now her recent bloods came back, everything was normal, which has been fantastic. She's very excited. And she's lost 10 kilos over quite a few months. So she's been really happy about that. So I think that, you know, it's actually important to know that sometimes it's really obscure things that could be not working for your body.
Yeah.
And you need to work them out slowly.
Yeah.
You can't just go, oh, grains are coming back. It just doesn't work that way. There's a real stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 with reintroductions. Yeah. And actually we never reintroduce gluten because the transition from AIP is paleo.
Yeah, or dairy. That's a big no-no as well.
Yeah, or dairy. I mean, dairy does get reintroduced actually. But very few people manage to bring it in very successfully. But gluten actually never gets reintroduced.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, with what we understand about gluten and leaky gut and things like that, it's not something that we want to mess with.
No. Well, I guess what happened is through all the different research they've done, they've realized that gluten, the presence of gluten increases a chemical in the gut called zonulin, which increases the tight junctions between cells that stop food from getting out, particles and microbes from getting into the bloodstream. They get loosened and they start to open with too much zonulin.
Yeah.
So gluten actually is one of the contributors to leaky gut.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason that gluten never gets reintroduced. And to be honest, most people with autoimmune should stay well away from gluten. I mean, it's difficult. And I still eat a bit of gluten here and there with no major effects as long as it's here and there.
Yeah. See, I can have gluten, but I know that to the dot, 48 hours later, I'm going to be out for a few hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it's
not worth it, is it?
It's not worth it. No, because it's that deep sleep. Like, you know, when think back to like high school when you're sitting in a really boring class and you're trying your hardest not to fall asleep, it's just impossible to stay awake. So and I would usually nap for about 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's
the gluten fog, right? It's like a fog. So I find that when people first go on the protocol, the biggest thing they say to me is my brain fog has gone and my fatigue has lifted.
Yeah.
And I think that really happens as soon as they get rid of the grains.
Yeah.
Often dairy as well, but grains definitely, because when you eat a meal high in grains, it's high in carbs, and you get this spike in blood sugar, spike in insulin, and then you get this crash when it all comes down. So I think what happens when you're on the AIP or when you eat paleo, for example, is your blood sugar actually just very gently does that instead of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of the fatigue and the exhaustion is the insulin spike.
Yeah. So if someone is, how would we monitor whether or not this protocol, this dietary component of the protocol is working? So how would we scale that in terms of symptoms, because the symptoms can be quite nuanced, and it's not always, it's not always like a big thing that's like, oh my God, like there it is. Sometimes it can creep up on you. Like, for example, as I just said, for me, if I have gluten, it takes a good 48 hours. So it's not an instantaneous reaction.
No. So what we do to kind of, what I do is I basically put together like a symptom chart, and I go through, because obviously when you first see a client, you get a huge history and you get a really good understanding of what they want to achieve, what are their objectives. For most of them, it's get rid of bloating, stop the fatigue, the brain fog, and maybe, for a lot of the rheumatoid arthritis or ankylosing spondylitis, it's pain, reduced pain and inflammation. So whatever those main objectives are, that's what I put into a table, and we basically rate everything from the start. So 0 is I never have this symptom, and 10 is I always have this symptom. So generally people start with 8 to 10 out of 10 for most things. And then every month we're tracking it. So after, let's say, a month of AIP, for most people, most of those symptoms will go down. Pain and inflammation is the slowest, but bloating and fatigue and fog is actually the fastest to improve, in my experience that I've seen so far. And then we just keep tracking it. And, some people, weight loss is one of their big objectives. So we'll track weight loss. And, we just keep an eye on that. And then what happens is, with the reintroduction process, it's a bit more tricky. So I will only let them reintroduce one food every 5 days. 5 to 7 days is the minimum. So I just saw a client the other day, and I said, they just started reintroductions. I said, so great, how was this? Well, one of the things they reintroduced, cumin spice. You'd never think that would cause an issue, right? It's just a little spice. That day, completely fine, no symptoms, had it, everything good. Woke up the next day, pain in the joints.
Wow.
The day after, it was a little bit better, until it had gone again. So that's strike out. That's on my foods to avoid list now for that client. So I think it's really important that we are, giving one food. I do one food every 5 days, give them a little list. And then when I see them next, we go through every single one. How did you go? What did you feel? What happened? And so far, all the alcohol hasn't worked either for this particular client. So, that's been interesting as well. And I think that way, your symptoms that might take 2 days or even 3 days to appear, you catch it.
It's amazing, like how much power can be in food. And I think that's why, putting information like this out there is so important, because people think, oh, but it's healthy. It's a healthy food. It'll be good. And like people, especially, let's not even talk about the Australian dietary guidelines. But there is,
we won't go there.
But there is, I think as a collective, there is such a strong emphasis that grains are healthy for us. And they certainly can be, they certainly have a lot of nutritional benefits, in terms of fiber and your B vitamins and your proteins, and particularly if you're plant-based, then they're staple foods. But it just doesn't work for everyone. And
no, exactly. And I think that the guidelines give you all this information, but then they don't turn it into practical understanding of the food. And I think that's where there's been a disconnect for quite some time with these guidelines. It's one thing to say whole grains are great, but put together a healthy plate and do that instead. So whole grains are great, but I would say that your plate needs to consist of a big amount of green leafy, lots of great vegetables, maybe some sort of protein, whatever that may be, preferably, I would say fish. is really important. And then if you're going to do your grains, you know, a little bit of quinoa or a little bit of brown rice, yeah, they're all very healthy and great for most people in small quantities, or mixed in a salad or something like that. But the bulk of your food, I do think, should be plant-based.
Absolutely.
But the whole grains should actually just be one small component of it. And that doesn't mean that it is bread.
Yeah.
And it certainly doesn't mean it's supermarket bread or 2-minute noodles.
Yeah.
Or, you know, instant rice that you stick in the microwave to cook.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think everything in our diet is now focused on convenience, the supermarket and convenience. And, you know, there's no, you know, surprise why autoimmune diseases have gone up astronomically over the last 50 years. They're out of control now.
Yeah.
I just read an article from The Guardian the other day that said that autoimmune diseases have increased so much, and now we're seeing a huge increase in countries like Africa and Asia that had almost no autoimmune diseases beforehand, because of the change in diet, this convenience, this, you know, buying bread from the supermarket, which is made in a completely different way than it was 50 years ago by the baker.
Well, it's the, you know, as they call it, the nutrition transition.
Yes.
Where it's, you know, ultra processed foods are now globally available.
That's right.
You know, and particularly when, you know, you're looking at, I mean, in countries like ours here in Australia, and places that have, you know, a lot more accessibility to healthy foods, there's, we tend to eat a lot more healthy, but again, like, our dietary guidelines are so outdated that we're still consuming high amounts of gluten and grains and dairy and we're still eating processed foods, because unfortunately there's a lot of false health claims and people don't know how to read food labels. But in lower socioeconomic countries, they just get what they have access to, and they get what they can afford. So it's not surprising to hear that chronic illness, whether it's, you know, autoimmunity or obesity or malnourishment, malnutrition, either way, whether it's obesity or undernourishment, like, it's no wonder that we're seeing that rise more and more.
Absolutely. And it's such a shame, because it's incredible that government aren't more proactive in doing what they can to you know, take off that burden, because autoimmune diseases, cancer, obesity, all of these things, they are all preventable diseases.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, autoimmunity is different because it does have a big genetic component, and it's got a big environment component. So environment, genetics, and then diet and exercise, they're the three big things that make up an autoimmune condition. Now, we can't do much about our genetics, and often we can't do much about our environment, but we can change our diet, we can change our exercise, and we can do things to reduce our stress. So there are a lot of things that we can do that are in our control. And I guess, you know, I mean, it'd be great if government would, you know, do some clever things like taxing processed foods, soft drinks, McDonald's, all that sort of thing, to discourage people. Pretty sad when you can feed a family of 6 at McDonald's or KFC cheaper than the supermarket. That's a pretty sad, sorry state of affairs, I think, personally. But, you know, I think that there are a lot of things we can do to improve our nutritional status and help manage autoimmune disease naturally. It's just difficult because most people, when they're finally diagnosed, and the diagnosis itself can take forever. When they're finally diagnosed, they've gone to a specialist who specialises in their specific autoimmune disease. They're not that holistic, and they don't ever talk about, well, not ever, because there actually are a few really good ones I've come across that do talk about diet. But a lot of them just sort of get started on the medication. And I know with IBD, medication's the big thing, first of all, which I totally get, because people that are newly diagnosed are really struggling.
Yeah.
The medication helps everything to calm down. But then suddenly they're like, well, is this it? Is this what I have to live with? All this medication, which has a lot of side effects. So
and that goes for thyroid as well. Like sometimes you
absolutely
need medication, and
that's right.
amazing that those medications are available. But the problem is when it's like, okay, well, this is what you're gonna have to take forever, and that's what we're stuck with. There's no consideration for those other factors like diet and lifestyle and toxic exposure, and there's no real drive. I mean, I've certainly never come across a doctor or a specialist who really gone, okay, let's figure out what's actually causing your autoimmune. And it's difficult sometimes when, I mean, I'm grateful that I've done the studies and that I have a community of practitioners like yourself. Because otherwise, I honestly don't know where I would be. I don't even know if I have a diagnosis or if I have the right diagnosis, because they misdiagnosed me when I first found out. And like, it's scary to think where I would be. And like it's quite scary sometimes, like how much preventative resources are out there that are not being utilized.
That's right. And I think in America there are so many people that have autoimmune disease, and AIP really started with Sarah Ballantyne in America. She's just been amazing for it, and while it existed in other forms, I think she's really taken it and brought it to the forefront. So in America, there's support groups, there's tons of certified practitioners. The course I did was an American course based on Sarah Ballantyne's work. And, it's just so accessible. There's AIP food delivery. There's so much there. But in Australia, it's sort of starting. It's definitely gathering a lot more steam, but there's still only a handful of us that are certified coaches, and there's certainly a lot of people that have got autoimmune, and there's a lot of specialists that are working with them that are not actually saying, well, have you considered working with a specialist, with a coach? Have you considered that you can, perhaps manage your symptoms a lot better? It's a shame, but I think also the way the medical system's set up here, doctors don't often refer to naturopaths or nutritionists. They tend to refer to dietitians, and dietitians also have to stick to, they're very managed in what they're allowed to do and say and teach. So, some of us have got our hands, tied behind our backs. Others, like nutritionists and naturopaths, we can, we're not bound by HAPRA, so we can kind of say, well, actually, there's another way. Why don't we try this?
Yeah.
And I think it will get bigger and bigger down the track, but we have a different medical system than they do in America.
Yeah.
So it's going to take time.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the way that we need to look at the AIP, it's not a diet. It's not a fat diet. It's not something that you do for weight loss or, like it's a healing protocol.
That's right. That's exactly it. And it's a protocol. That's the key word. It's a protocol. So part of the protocol is the 30-day elimination diet. But the other part of the protocol is making sure that your sleep is good. You've got great quality of sleep, that you're, not waking up at 3 a.m. every day and then you can't fall back asleep, that you don't have sleep apnea, that you're getting enough exercise and the right exercise. I've met many people who are really struggling with some serious autoimmune diseases, and they're trying to train for a triathlon. And I'm like, whoa, stop. You can't.
No hits for you.
No, you can't do all this. It's too much stress for your body. People are addicted addicted to the stress and the feeling of it. They don't know any difference, some of them, but it's like, no, it's not going to work. So there's a lot of other things to take into consideration. And, you know, I love breathing exercises. I love meditation's not for everybody, so I don't tend to push that, but I do a lot of breathing work because I think that's really great. And even just 5 deep breaths before a meal is enough to get, you know, the rest and digest part of your nervous system working. So, and reduce the stress. So I love that. I love the alternate nostril breathing, and I'm big into that, and yoga, and I love all that stuff, but it's not for everybody, I know. So it's about working out what is going to work best for the person in front of you.
And I mean, I think as far as exercise goes, like I certainly can't do, like even on my really good days, I would not be able to do like something really intense, because I know that I might be able to get through it and I'll feel amazing afterwards. If I don't pace myself, then my body will wake up one morning and go, no, we're done. He pushed me too far. I'm not dealing with this. So I think it's important to find what works for you and pace yourself, and start with like stretches or Pilates or light weights, you know, just like a little bit of resistance training, go for a walk, you know, things like that. And I mean, I would even recommend working with like maybe a personal, like I'm not an exercise physiologist, like I'm not a qualified PT, but even working with someone who can guide you to figuring out some gentle exercises that will help support your body needs and your physical needs.
Absolutely. And it depends on your symptoms, you know, people that are suffering chronic pain.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
which is common.
That's right. So if you've got chronic pain, then you've got to pull back on the, you know, high impact exercise and stick to the low impact exercise. I think that's really important. And I actually try and get my clients to mix it up a lot. So to focus on the walking, to make the walking the mainstay, and then just to add in, you know, a bit of resistance training or some yoga or some Pilates, like you said. I think it's great. You know, I love dancing. So I think dancing is a fantastic thing as well, because it's fun and you can do it, you know, with your whole family or your friends. I love that sort of idea to do that. The other thing that I think people underestimate is hobbies, like, you know, reading's an obvious one, but painting and music, things like that, or singing or whatever. Like, I think joy and happiness really makes a big difference to your mindset and to your health at the end of the day. And I also think connection, and so it's not just spiritual, but connecting with friends, with people. I feel like in the last 2 years, we've spent a lot of time apart from everybody, from loved ones and from friends, and people are naturally a little bit more cautious. But I think it's really important to see people, connect with people. I'm a big believer of that, especially when I'm coaching people that live on their own. Then it's about, okay, you know, where do you see your friends? Where do you bump into people? How can you increase that connection? Do an extra Zoom call. What can you do to have that? Because I definitely am a big believer that the connection with people is really important when you're dealing with any chronic illness.
100%. I mean, the good thing is now with social media, there's ways to connect with like-minded people, and a lot of the times I find, you know, people will be starting up their own groups and meetups, and you know, it might be people who love going to cafes, they'll meet up, and they'll like cafe hop, or they'll go do picnics or bike rides or horse riding, or you know, whatever you might be interested in. So there's communities out there, and I think
there is absolutely. You just got to reach out. You just got to find them.
It's a lot easier,
but they are all there
with social media. So
absolutely,
amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us, Vicky. Hopefully that's been insightful. But I just, I think there's not enough information about the AIP out there for people to, to really understand like what it is and why we do it, why we promote this particular protocol. The good news is that there is more research being done on this particular protocol as well. As you said, it is relatively new and it's just sort of starting to really take off.
Yeah, and the research is I found that the research there's a lot on IBD.
Yeah.
Very successful, small trials, very, very small ones, but they've all seen, 60%, 70%, 80% achieving clinical remission after 6 weeks or 11 weeks, which is not a lot of time. So they're really promising. There's also been lots of scientific research done for Hashimoto's as well. In particular, they found that having the connection, working with people, not being alone, having support team in place has really improved quality of life and symptoms as well, which is fantastic. And, look, I think there's plenty more, research on the horizon. I know I was having a look at what's going on with the research under the autoimmunewellness.com, which is the main, I guess the main community in America that do the coaching certification that I did. So it's Angie Alt and Nikki. So they've been brilliant. And Vicky
has an amazing. Is her book The Healing Kitchen? Is that her?
So no, she has Autoimmune Wellness Manifesto, which is great. But The Healing Kitchen is actually Sarah Ballantyne and this girl Alina Harbour. So that's what.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And I love this one because there's probably more recipes. So the one that Angie and Vicky have put together is brilliant, but a lot of it is how to do it, why we do it. There's a lot of information. So it's a brilliant, incredible resource. And you can actually get it all online on their website as well. But what they do, which I love, is they've got on their website, they've got a whole section on medical research. So there's tons on eczema, psoriasis, there's a new one on rheumatoid arthritis now, which I haven't yet read. And then there's quite a few on hashies, lots on IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, but then there's a whole lot of related stuff. So, and research that hasn't necessarily come out as a study, but a lot more information. So it's a brilliant resource. It's fantastic. And I really recommend that that people have a look at that website. And, my website, certainly I've got a little bit about AIP, but I've got links to their websites as well.
Yeah, they are
so informative.
They were actually my first introduction into the AIP.
Were they?
And I like binged. I binged everything.
Great.
They're amazing, and the good thing is like they're constantly updating things as well. And like even on the Instagram, particularly Mickey's Instagram, she does a lot of recipes and like batch cooking, and it's amazing just because as I said, it can seem a little bit daunting, I think, if you're not used to it and you're not familiar with the what and the why and the how of it all. I think sometimes it's really helpful to like have those resources and just to have someone really show you, well, this is how you can do it, and it's not that scary. Right. And don't think about what you can't have, but think about what you can have, and then get creative with those things.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think it's really interesting. The clients that I see, some of them really want to know the information. They want to know the science. They want to understand it.
Yeah.
Other people aren't interested. They just go, okay, what do I do?
Yeah.
So it's fantastic to have all that information at your fingertips. But for some people, they just like it broken down really simply. What do I need to do next? How do I do it? what recipe should I use?
Yeah.
So I like to do meal plans and things like that for
Yeah.
clients as well, just to break it down and to make it a little bit easier for them.
Yeah. Amazing. So, Vicky, how can people reach out to you? How can people work with you?
Yep, so you can work with me in a couple of different ways. I've just started putting together some packages.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like a basic five consult package, which is, often it's not so much about AIP, but it's about people that don't really know where they're at. That maybe they haven't been diagnosed yet, maybe they have, but they're just trying to work out what to do next. And that package sort of includes, testing and analysing pathology and things like that. And then I've got an AIP package, which is more of a 6-month program, and that involves, obviously the initial consultations. It's very long, and trying to understand their whole history and their medical history, because at the end of the day, we need to be aware of everything, the medication they're on, etc. And then it's, analysing pathology, working up proper supplementation, repeat pathology, analysing all of that, troubleshooting, and coaching through the whole process, not just of eliminating, but the most important part is actually the reintroduction and making sure they're introduced properly and understanding. And the rest of it, the sleep, the stress, the exercise, making sure they come out of the 6-month program just in the most incredible health that they've been in for a long time. So you can work with me through a package, or you can work with one-to-one consults. And I think down the track, I may be looking at some group consulting as well, if there's a bit of a need for that. I feel like there's a lot of people that would love to do that, because then you can connect via Facebook, and then there's a bit more of a connection and a group, to lean on as well. And and I've got a couple of other things in the pipeline, but probably not yet ready to talk about those down the track.
Yeah, but people can follow you and keep up to date with all of that.
Absolutely. So on Facebook and Instagram, I am the Nutrition Factor AU is how you'd find me. And if you want to find me online, my website is thenutritionfactor.com.au. So if you type in the Nutrition Factor or AIP, the Nutrition Factor, or anything like that, you'll be directed to my website, and then there's different information there and plenty of ways to get in contact with me as well.
Awesome. She's very easy to find, everyone.
Yes, hopefully I am easy to find. And, you can just book in for a free discovery call, just for a free chat with what's going on for you, and whether or not you feel that you want to take the next step with AIP, or where, a lot of people don't even know if they've got an autoimmune disease. They just feel really awful, the digestion's awful. Just call me and let's have a chat and work out where to go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me on the podcast.
Pleasure.
I love chatting to you.
Me too, always.
Always interested to hear about your journey.
Well, I'll keep you.
Keep me. Yes, we'll keep talking.
I'll send you my pathology results after this. You can analyze me.
Wonderful. I'll do it with pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Vicky.
Thanks, Liz. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.